Asynchronous Total Order broadcast. Simon, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's quite a mouthful. So basically, I will start like my first 8 slides or something unpacking the title. So we are not exactly creating from the bottom a total order broadcast, but instead tackling the issues when you want to do total order broadcast in an asynchronous network using proof of stake and for a large set of parties without going to completely crazy concrete committee sizes. So, total order broadcast, if you're not familiar, it is just a blockchain, a consistent append-only log of messages. So in an asynchronous world, we assume an adversary has control of how messages are delivered. There are no guarantees on when they are delivered, but if eventually they are delivered, then the protocol should make some progress. And we know that any live protocol in such a setting requires a source of entropy. And this is what we're trying to tackle. So if you are in a synchronous or partially synchronous network, you often, in partially synchronous networks, you also need a source of randomness, and in synchronous networks, you also want to use it for efficiency reasons. And in those two settings, conflicting is easy. You could do something like you give everyone uses a VRF on some value. They get they provide some randomness. Then you pick whoever has the lowest VRF value, and then this is your coin flip for this round of the protocol. And if you wait for long enough, then this works. In an asynchronous network, the adversary can always delay a particular party that has like the best value or whatever. So this doesn't work at all. Instead, you have to do something where you sort of commit to something that you know can be opened at a later point. So what most protocols do then is to assume a perfect coin functionality, because that's basically the only scalable way we know how to do it. And the classical example of this is a paper by Cachin and Kosawa and Schub from the early aughts called Random Oracles in Constantinople. And it is basically think of creating a signature using a threshold key and putting this through a random oracle. Then you have your coin. In order to set this up, so that everyone has the key shares for the signature scheme, you need to either use like a trusted dealer. This could be fine if you're in a permissioned network, or you need to do some sort of key distribution protocol. And in an asynchronous network, the only way we know to do this is something that takes cubed in the number of parties, word complexity even. So considering that the total order broadcast by itself is only squared communication complexity, this is not ideal. So this is going to completely dominate any proof of stake implementation of total order broadcast. Yeah. Okay, so proof of stake. Or maybe I should say, like, if you're in a permissioned model or just a model where you have a static set of parties, you could imagine just running this once and for all and amortized over the lifetime of the protocol. It might not be that bad. But in proof of stake, you have this, let's say, soft permissionless model. So, I mean, it's not like anyone can always join, but if you're allowed to buy some stake, then you can just join the protocol. And then every time sort of an epoch passes, or whatever you want to call these, I mean, sometimes as stakes moves around, you have to take this into account in your protocol. And every time you then do this, if you are using this threshold key approach, I mean, you would have to do a new setup. And if you want to keep it up to date, I mean, you have to do it often. So this is going to be a dominant part of your protocol. There are other smaller issues, like we don't want to assume that everyone should have the same amount of stake. which means that you would have to do something like discretize the stake and then give everyone an amount of keys shares that corresponds to their stake and stuff like this. This is also annoying to handle. And then finally, in proof of stake, you really often need some sort of seed. So basically, whenever you change the stake distribution, if you don't, after the fact, introduce some randomness that's used in your VRFs or whatever you're going to use in your protocol, you can do like key grinding attacks, find some key that's often used, often sampled for a committee or something like that. Yeah. So if you want to do it large scale, there's this standard solution. You could think of Algorand, or these. There are a few asynchronous protocols as well. And basically, what you do is you sample a committee and then let them run the protocol on behalf of everyone else. But since it's an asynchronous protocol, it's going to need to, like the committee will usually need to have a super honest supermajority. And so this means that basically you have to have a significant gap between the amount of corruption you can tolerate in the ground population from which you sample the committee and then the committee running the protocol. And if you only care about asymptotics, I mean, you can do something like this, say for any security parameter and any constant epsilon, I mean, you can get very close to the actual optimal resilience, but it's gonna hurt a lot. But asymptotically, it's like it's lambda-sized committees, so you get subquadratic communication. So we could just use the same approach for our asynchronous distributed key generation, but yeah, as I said, this is going to be really large committees. So in order to make this actually practical, this is a concrete, very new analysis of the Algorand protocol shows that if you want 56 bits of securities, I guess they started from this committee size of 6,000, then if you assume only 20% of your ground population are corrupted, then you get 56 bits of security. So yeah, it's a quite large committee size concretely. And yeah, if you want to go closer to the actual optimal resilience, I mean, they become very quickly very huge. Like if you want to go to 70%, it's like in the order of 20,000 instead. So instead, what if you could sample committees that just run sub-protocols which require less honest parties, so much higher resilience? And what we do in our protocol is basically we sample for committees where you only need honest majority or even less, and then you get a couple of hundreds in your committees with 60 bits of security and without going to lower resilience from the beginning. If you're willing to do that, then it becomes less than 200 for the honest majority committee. Okay, so the blueprint is sort of this. Assume you already have your 8 sub running. Maybe you do the expensive asynchronous distributed key generation once and for all. And now you have an 8 sub running. Then you sample a committee, and all of the people in this committee is going to act as their own trusted dealer. And then they will create a threshold key setup. They will encrypt the share, and I put an asterisk because you have to be able to show that when you use your share that you decrypted it correctly, but it's we will handle later. And then you just put the entire thing on the chain. This will then allow you to show consistency when you in the end use your key share. Yeah. So then the question is, how are we going to actually use this thing? I mean, when are we done listening for trusted dealers? Because some of them might be corrupted and never answer. So the answer is make sure that your committee has honest majority. So you can wait for just any majority of the parties to respond. You know, at least one honest did. So you have at least one good setup, essentially. Yeah. And so in order to make sure that when we're going to use these setups, we want to, like, it would be annoying if, since we're anyway doing this, we might as well just let a small committee use, have key shares, so the communication complexity of actually reconstructing a coin is not quadratic, but just quadratic in the security parameter. And this keeps both the thing you put on the chain small, it means there's less communication, and it also means that this unevenly distributed stake is now handled for free, because you're just selected to the committee with probability proportional to your stake. Yeah, and then finally, okay, so there's an issue you have to handle. Basically, if you just take the first majority thing you see, put those on the chain, and then, I don't know, use round robin or something, the adversary could schedule things such that you get a large amount of bad setups in a row. So what you can do is just, using the C protocol that we anyway need to implement, you shuffle all of your all of the setups, so they're used in a random order that was unpredictable at the time they were submitted to the chain, and so you get constant latency expected, if you had it from the beginning, that is. Yeah, and so the blueprint is sort of, or like the intuition you should have is sort of this, that these W parties are selected to propose a setup, or in fact, like 2W plus 1 or something are selected, minus 1. They will all propose some setups, but for these setups, we sort of, because you can sort of tolerate. Does this work? No. No. Okay. So as long as you never have deadlocks, like in this bottom case where there are more, like there are not enough honest parties on the committee to sign using the threshold setup. As long as you're not in this case, the protocol will have liveness. So you just have some small probability that the setup will not hide the key ahead of time. This allows you to go to much smaller committees, which is why we get those 200 size committees instead of 700 for the parties holding the keys to flip the coins. Yeah, and so what we then get is a common coin most of the time, which is also unpredictable most of the time, for very small committees. And yeah, for the seed generation, what we do is basically select a committee again with honest majority as before. Each member will verifiably secret share a random value. Again, it's not exactly verifiable secret sharing, but we'll get to that. And then all the shares are encrypted and put on the chain. And as soon as a majority are registered, you just open them and then output the XOR as your random value. And the one thing that makes it different from a verifiable secret sharing, yeah, okay, so it distributes a secret onto a committee. The committee can always reconstruct as they should. But unlike a verifiable secret sharing, we will leak the secret with constant probability. And so what you do is basically, if I just want to secret share a random bit string, I can expand it using a certain random generator, and then I get some random tape, and I can use this to sample a secret sharing of the bit string and random elements to encrypt the shares. And then finally, when you want to open, everyone can just send their shares and approve that these were decrypted correctly. And finally, this means that I can now, when we reconstruct, if I reconstruct something, that when I put it into this entire deterministic thing again, I get the entire thing back, meaning all of the shares or all of the encryptions of the shares I saw on the blockchain are consistent with what I reconstruct. Then I output that random thing. Otherwise, I just say there was no output. Or there's a like bottom output or whatever. I think we'll skip the verifiable decryption details. Yeah. Thank you.
We have some time for questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Hi. So if I understand this correctly, our advantage here comes from splitting the one giant key generation committee into a variety of subcommittees, each of which is supposed to have an honest majority, and then we need an honest majority of those. Could you ever see it going a level deeper where we have a committee of committees of an honest majority of majorities?
No, but I think I have a good idea of how to get rid of one layer of committees, but it gets a bit more complicated how you actually use them in the consensus protocol. Yeah. But yeah, we can take that offline if you're interested.
Thanks.
Do we have more questions from the audience?
Just a quick question. So you, when you were talking about signatures, you said like there's either a trusted setup or a DKG. I was wondering, so there are many signature protocols with a local key generation where like you don't need even a DKG. It's like everyone just generates a key on their own. So I was wondering, why can you not use those? Like, is it because the signatures are not the same for all quorums? I'm just.
Yeah, I imagine it would not work if you hear from different subsets. I'm not familiar. I'm not sure what construction you have in mind, but I imagine it wouldn't give the same thing if you hear from different subsets.
Okay, yeah, because you need a shared random. Randomness, I guess. Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Anyone from the audience? I do have a question about the weak VSS. I imagine you do that because of efficiency reasons, right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with the fact that the secret might leak?
So basically, because you share, like you have security parameters, many people sharing a thing. What you essentially get is like 1% of them is going to leak the secret. So if you just like bump it up slightly, you get this like you get the same as if there was no negligible. Doesn't make sense. Like you do success amplification very very fast.
It makes sense. Well,
yeah,
at least.
yeah.
Well, let's thank Simon again for the talk.